we're in the middle of a revolution. I want everyone who was left out of the previous financial system to get into this revolution and get in quickly.
What is going on, Scan fam? Welcome to another episode of the Crypto Current. Today we are joined with Tegan Kline. Tegan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Awesome. So Tegan Kline is a co-founder and the chief business officer at Edge and Node. They're doing some amazing things in Web3, some great technology, some great community building. So look forward to this podcast. I think it's going to be an awesome conversation. Thanks again for hopping on. Dennis, want to go ahead and kick us off here?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, Tegan, thanks so much for hopping on. We're super excited for you to have you on this podcast. And can you tell us a little bit about your background in investment banking and how it led you to the world of blockchain?
Totally. Yeah. So I actually started my career in FIG at Bank of America, which is a bulge bracket investment bank. I came from a state school, and everyone told me when I got to that school that it would be impossible to get it to a bulge bracket. I really hustled. I probably did over 1,000 informational interviews with people at different banks, got the offer. And from there, FIG is actually one of the nerdiest groups, which I did not know. And in hindsight, I probably should have continued hustling when I got the offer just to figure out the different cultures of different groups. I'm definitely more of like a LevFin, M&A kind of girl. But I think where I am today, I'm actually grateful that I landed in FIG because it's what led me to leave. And maybe if I went into LevFin, who knows, maybe I would still be stuck in banking, which no one wants.
Sure.
So from there, I think IB is very glamorized. A lot of people see it through these like rose-colored glasses. You get to do IPOs and mergers and acquisitions, and it sounds super fun. But as an analyst, you're kind of in a back room doing all of the decks and the modeling for everyone else to go and have fun with it. And I didn't really want to dedicate, 5+ years of my life to kind of climbing up the ranks at an investment bank. And so from there, I moved to sales and trading where I could do like faster deals. You do so many deals a day. It's a lot more fun. And instead of working 100 hours a week, you're working closer to like 60. So it's a better balance. When I was in sales and trading, I saw how broken the tech stack was. There's of course many problems. One, you're a middleman. You're not super needed if things were a little bit more efficient. So I kind of saw that firsthand. One example is, you have a T+2 settle when you do a trade. That means it takes 2 days for the client to get whatever they bought and for the money to transfer. That is so inefficient. And so when I learned about Ethereum, I really saw an opportunity to create a new financial system that's much more efficient, where you have instant settle, and also kind of create a new internet where people are empowered as opposed to, a bunch of middlemen being empowered and kind of taking all the money. So I did my 2 years in sales and trading at Barclays, and then I left to go full-time in crypto. I definitely made some mistakes there. I left my first company after 3 months, but I think what's important is that when you have an opportunity, you take it. And I left sales and trading to go into investor relations, not knowing a single venture capitalist firm, not knowing a single investor, and I still took that opportunity. So I think, my biggest piece of advice is to say yes to opportunities, especially when they scare you, and don't be afraid of growth.
Could you kind of give us some insight into what exactly your first entrance into crypto was? It was like Bitcoin mining? Was it seeing some token that went 1,000x on Instagram or something like that? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so I actually learned about Bitcoin in 2011. I was in honors with Kevin Segnicki, who later went on to launch Avalanche Protocol. And he taught me about Bitcoin, but he didn't buy any for me or show me how to buy it. Back then, though, it was way different than it is today. Today, you can just get it on an exchange and buy whatever you want. Back then, you had to find someone, meet in a shady alley or coffee shop, give them cash, they give you the Bitcoin, or you send it overseas and hope the Bitcoin shows up in your account. So definitely a different world back then. Right. So that was really when the seed was planted.
Or buy some pizza for someone.
Totally. Or something on the dark web.
Yeah.
And it was really Ethereum that kind of pulled me into the space more full time. And, had I understood monetary policy a little bit more back in 2011, I probably would have dove in head first back then. But, I didn't really understand the Fed's role in a lot of the inequality that we face today. So, props to all the early Bitcoiners who did.
Awesome. I know you went into the graph, or you were the initial team behind the graph. Can you kind of tell the audience, I'm sure they already heard about it, but just a quick rundown of the graph, why you chose the graph, and just how you got involved? Because I think that it's just a crazy story as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually went to a festival with Yaniv Tal back in the day. We rented an RV and went to like one of the Take 3 events. And he told me about the graph then. And this was, a couple years before I joined. And one story that really stuck out to me when he was telling me about the graph, like the global knowledge database of all data in the world organized in a decentralized way, was that he made a hard decision. He was actually raising equity. He had all his investors lined up, and he made a shift before they closed that round to change it to a token structure, because that's more in line with decentralization and the values of the space, which I really admired. And it was when I left Orchid that I was invited to kind of come in and help fundraise for the graph and do BD. And then I ended up taking on marketing and everything else, just because it was such a tiny team. But what really drew me in was, one, the team. Eva Balin definitely helped a lot and kind of allowing me to see the future of the graph, but also just how hungry the developers were for the graph back then. There were, a handful of developers that were using it, and I could just see how it was solving such a big need for people that are trying to build applications in Web3. And today there's there's tens of thousands of developers that are building on the graph, and thousands of applications that the graph allows to flourish. And so what the graph is, it's a decentralized indexing and query protocol. What the heck does that mean? Basically, what Google does for the web, the graph does for blockchains. So Google organizes data so you can easily search it. The graph does that for entrepreneurs and developers that are trying to get data from the blockchain. The data on the blockchain is not organized. It's super hard to get out. It's really difficult to create an indexer. And so that's what the graph solves for developers. And every use case that you can imagine, the graph is serving, between social media, NFTs, DeFi, you name it, the list goes on and on.
For some of our viewers that are listening that might not know so much about the graph, is it something more developer focused where you're providing APIs, or is it more of like a user-friendly interface where people are able to just go and search what they're looking for?
Yeah, so if you've ever used Uniswap as an example to change tokens, you've leveraged the graph's technology. So Uniswap is an application that builds on top of the graph. So it very much is developers, are the ones kind of pulling that, but then users are the ones interfacing with it. And every time you use those applications, the graph is pulling that data in the back end. So think token values, how many NFTs are in your portfolio, price changes. And so we query blockchain data from the blockchain's genesis. And we support over 40 chains today. So Ethereum, IPFS, at the storage layer, Optimism, Arbitrum, ZK Sync, basically every blockchain people are using, we're there to support.
That's awesome. And can you tell us a little bit now, like you're now the co-founder and the business lead at Edge and Node. Like, can you explain the mission and goals of the company in the broader context of like the Web3 ecosystem?
Totally, yeah. So when we launched the graph, we were the graph company, but then the graph became the technology, became the decentralized network, just like Bitcoin is the technology. It's not a team or company. And Edge and Node is one of the many companies that exist in the graph ecosystem today. But initially, we were the first core dev. And so kind of the short-term mission is to really remove all centralized points of failure that exist within the graph ecosystem, and to make the graph autonomous. So one big focus for this year is just getting all of the traffic that's on the hosted service onto the decentralized network. We started with this hosted version to prove product market fit. We didn't charge developers for that because that's not one of our values, for kind of being a middleman and being paid to do that. We've probably spent, upwards of 20 million on that infrastructure for the ecosystem today. But now it's time to help developers get over to the network, and they're paying for GRT and query fees once they get to the network, which is the Graph's native utility token.
Could you kind of talk about what role the Graph token plays in the Graph ecosystem?
Totally, yeah. So it is a work utility token. It's important to mention that you should only ever purchase what you intend to use in the Graph network. But how it works is, developers, once they launch a subgraph, which is an open API, as you mentioned, Evan, once they launch that, they signal with GRT on that subgraph. And that allows indexers to pay attention to that subgraph.
Okay.
And indexers stake GRT, and then delegators, that's the least technical role. And everyone always asks me, like, how do I get to Web3? How can I use it? Is it an app? Like, what is Web3? The best way to get involved in Web3 today is actually to be a delegator on the Graph network. And then the indexers, which are performing the heavy lift for, serving queries and serving data for these applications, they actually share their GRT fees with you.
That's awesome. Kind of shifting a bit, like I wanted to know, like, how has your work in crypto, in the crypto industry, contribute to making applications on blockchain technology possible and helping individuals gain equal access to the internet?
Totally. Yeah. So when I was at Orchid, a big focus of ours was getting everyone equal access to the internet. The internet is very fragmented today. When you go, when you're in China, you see a different internet than when you are in the US or Russia. And the idea was to create a private blockchain, not in the sense of like a private enterprise blockchain, but in the sense of you have privacy on that blockchain with a decentralized VPN on top. They pivoted to Ethereum, which is a public blockchain. And when you're in China and VPNs aren't legal, you don't really want to have full transparency over your VPN tokens. Right. Yeah. So that was really our goal back then. But with the graph, it is helping everyone get equal access to data. So in Web 2, you have a few indexers. Google is a big one, and Google has a lot of power. And when you have power, you either get corrupted yourself, you get corrupted from the inside, or an outside force corrupts you. And that's really what we've learned with a lot of these tech giants, right? And so the idea within the graph ecosystem is there's over 450 Googles or Google-like companies that are serving data. And so no one company can decide, oh, I just don't want to index that data. Let's pretend that data doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. No, there's other indexers to pick up that data and serve that data.
With your success in like launching 2 unicorns to date, EdgeNode and the Graph, can you speak to some of the challenges of building a successful startup in the blockchain industry? There's been just so many like builders out there, and I just want to get kind of your opinion on it as well.
Totally. So first and foremost, you need to be passionate about what you're working on. As an entrepreneur, it's blood, sweat, and tears. It's not easy. You have to be comfortable with chaos. And so in order to get through that chaos, to be successful, you have to really care about what you're doing. And, with the Graph, we're very much mission first. It really is about a lot of things in the world break down to us not having a way to coordinate or incentivize getting resources to people. Even hunger and shelter, these things, it's not that we don't have enough food, it's that we don't have the ability to get the food to the people, and we're not incentivizing getting it to the people that need it. Mm-hmm. And so the Graph is one example of how we're changing the way we incentivize coordination on the internet. And we're getting away from, maybe working for large companies that are middlemen that just want to take all the money and profits for themselves. And we give that back to individuals, the different stakeholders across the Graph ecosystem. So yeah, first and foremost, you have to be passionate. The second is you have to be values aligned, right? And doing something that's aligned with your values. I'll never forget, after I launched a project, the CEO pulled me into his office and he said, Tegan, you are too genuine and you're going to need to be more manipulative if you want to make it in life, if you don't want to be taken advantage of. And it's interesting because it's, him kind of showing his cards, right? He was kind of taking advantage of me. But I don't want to be manipulative and I don't agree with that. So I actually quit the next day and I joined a project that I am very values aligned with. And I think that that's really important. You have to stay true to your values. Don't work with people that aren't in line with your values. Don't do business with people that aren't in line with your values. And when people show you that they're not in line with your values, listen to them. But I think another thing is just you need to have product market fit. You need to be working on something that people actually want to use. And that's really, really important as well. And then the fourth thing I'll say is just on the people side. So hire slowly and fire fast. I am a bit brutal in this department, but it's what allows the team that's, makes it after the 3 to 6 month mark, know that they're safe. And we have a really special culture inside of EdgeNode where, everyone is mission first and foremost, but everyone also exceeds a very high excellence bar. And, it can be hard to fire people, but it's actually doing what's best for the team and also what's best for that person. Because if it's not working out for that person, it doesn't mean that they're not going to be great somewhere else. They'll shine brightly somewhere else. And there's so many people that I've had to let go of that actually say, Tegan, thank you, because now I'm here and I'm actually crushing it. And I'm like, I knew you would. So you're actually doing a service to other people when you fire fast if it's not a right fit.
Awesome. Can you share any insights or predictions for the future of DeFi and just the broader Web3 ecosystem? I know you've already done a huge dent in the market already, but I just want to kind of see what you're looking into. What are some of the things that are standing out to you?
Totally. Yeah. It's just the beginning with Web3. We're very much at the early days. There's so much opportunity still. What's really important right now is that we remove all centralized points of failure from the Web3 tech stack so that you can have applications that are unstoppable. That's another great thing about blockchains and the graph is that you can actually have an application that you deploy once and live forever. That's really the goal. And this is very different than Web 2 inside of Microsoft or Google. You have to like make $1 billion if you want your application to live inside of those companies for them to care or pay attention. Not in Web 3. You can have 1,000 users and the application can live forever if it's serving the needs of those users, which is really powerful. But my prediction is that Web3 will flip the internet. We will, instead of going to things like Google, you'll actually leverage different decentralized applications when you go on your smartphone or your web browser. So that's my prediction. And then also with DeFi, I think that DeFi will flip CeFi or centralized finance. As I mentioned, the tech stack is very broken inside of these centralized finance companies. It's ripe for innovation. They're going to, kick and scream, but eventually they will adopt it. And you still need people, even with DeFi protocols and applications, because if you're about to be liquidated, you want someone to call you and be like, hey, you need to add more collateral or you're going to be liquidated.
Yeah.
So that you'll still need these functions.
For sure. Do you think we'll ever truly be able to onboard older generations like our parents or grandparents, for example, or do you think it will be something that just kind of progresses as the generations themselves progress?
No, totally. I mean, my parents are on Coinbase. They're using crypto. I think, that's a good first start. Obviously, you want to go towards self-custody, but I don't think we're ready for the masses there yet. Yeah. With great power comes great responsibility. And I don't know if grandma's ready for that responsibility. Yeah. But I do think we'll get there. And I actually think that this is a great year for the user experience of the crypto space with a lot of the technology that's coming out on account abstraction and just embedding different wallets inside of applications. So I think we're getting closer.
For sure. Seeing some of the things that Coinbase has done with the accessibility to Web3 within the Coinbase app is crazy. You can use like Uniswap. The Coinbase wallet is very user-friendly. I think that they are making the biggest strides as far as user-friendliness. They're also trying to make the largest strides as far as regulations. Of course, the SEC is giving them problems, but who is the SEC?
Fighting that good fight. Yeah.
I also wanted to mention, there's a lot of people that are trying to break into Web3. And I know you mentioned this to me prior. It's like, I have to be technical. I have to have this knowledge coming into Web3. Can you speak to that and debunk some of these myths?
Totally. Yeah. It's total BS. You do not have to be an engineer. You don't even have to be technical. Basically, every role that exists in the world, we need that in Web3 and crypto. And the tech is no good if there's no one to translate the tech to the masses. And so much of crypto is about building a community and, onboarding people, getting people involved, helping people find passion. And we need people with soft skills to be able to do that. And so, yes, be it marketing, design, anything like podcasting, whatever you do, you can leverage those skills in Web3. So don't let the engineers bully you if you're on the business side.
That's awesome. I know you have a little mantra, do no harm, take no bull, change the world approach to business. Can you speak to the importance of maintaining ethical practices and values in the rapidly evolving blockchain industry?
Totally. Yeah. So, that tagline is really important, right? It's don't harm others, but also don't take any shit. And then, change the world, find passion. I think a lot of people are looking for that passion, but maybe haven't found it. And I think there's so much, there's so many passionate people in crypto that it is a bit contagious. But like you said, the ethical principles are so important. And you really, especially on the business side, maybe you want to take that shortcut or you want to maybe just do something bad once or, whatever it is, there's so many different scams that you can partake in if you want to get rich quick, quote unquote. My advice is to never take the short game, always play the long game. People pay attention. When I see people engage in those short-term activities, I'm not going to do business with them. And, you know, a lot of legitimate people in the industry won't. And so you're actually setting yourself back in the long term if you do engage in those short-term activities. So my advice is to always stay true to that moral compass, always do the right thing, and make your values like loud, call out injustice, call out, you know, some of the BS, call out some of the scammers, because then people will know which side you stand on.
Looking back at like your journey in the blockchain industry, what are you like most proud of in achieving, and what are some of your future goals?
Yeah, I would say definitely the launch of the Graph Network. That was a grind, a hustle. It took a lot of execution. It was like launching a rocket with NASA. There's so many pieces that had to come together. And it was just a really magical time. There's definitely improvements we want to make on the protocol, but I would say that that was really a big one. The curator program that we did ahead of the Graph Network launch allowed a lot of people from all over the world to get involved. And I think it actually changed a lot of people's lives. So that was really special to put together. And it was also a big reason why a lot of people actually understood what the Graph is and does, is because we had them go through that program. Another one, even though it's a little bit of a vanity metric, you know, I grew up in a small town in Ohio, and I would always look at people on Forbes 30 under 30 and just think, wow, like so incredible. And I would never have imagined being on that list today. And so just getting Forbes 30 under 30, even though it's kind of silly, it definitely was a personal goal for me.
No, I mean, that's certainly something huge. And I'm curious, you know, if you could go back to when you first got into crypto, maybe even when you got into banking, if you could go back then with everything that you know today, what are some things you would do differently, if anything at all?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would do anything different, because I think everything let me get to where I am today. I definitely think that going into banking, you know, most people came from Ivy Leagues, most people were dressed to the nines. I was definitely not. I had my suit that didn't fit. You know, going in, commuting into Times Square every morning for investment banking. And I would just go back and tell myself, you know, there were so many times where people were so mean in banking, and it was usually women that were probably dragged through hell by men that also wanted to drag other women through hell by men. And I would just tell myself, like, it's not you, it's them. And, you know, be confident, you know, stand up for who you are. But I think, you know, when you're young, you don't have that self-worth yet. And so I think that that's one of the things I would go back and tell myself.
I heard that there's a beautiful place in San Francisco called the House of Web3. Can you talk a bit more about that? I know you're really passionate about it. You helped do a lot of great things in the city and launch this place as well. So I would love to hear your perspective on it, how we can get access, anything.
Totally. Yeah. So, you know, we're rebels in crypto, right? And one of the things is that everyone was saying is that San Francisco is over, it's dead. There's not going to be any more capital there. There's not going to be any more startups. So of course, right during COVID, we get a space and we name it the Edge and Node House of Web3. And it's not an office. There's a million offices. It's not a co-working space. There's a million co-working spaces. This is really a co-creation space for anyone who's adding value in Web3. You know, Web3 is a meritocracy. It's not about the color of your skin, the gender, how much money you have, who your parents are. It's about the value that you add and contribute. And so anyone who's contributing value is welcome at the Edge and Node House of Web3. It's definitely become a destination space. People fly in just to check it out, just to, you know, experience the space. And we really want to host anyone who's adding value. So that is the space. And also, Dennis, to your point on, you don't have to be technical to get involved in Web3 and crypto. I think the space is a great example of that. We hired Noelle from Airbnb, who is an incredible designer. She leads marketing for us at Edge and Node, but the space was really her idea, and we kind of enabled it to happen. And she designed the whole thing. And so even if you're, you know, an interior designer or a designer, you can have a space in Web3 and crypto and think outside the box, right? There's so many amazing things that we can do, and you don't have to follow the same mold of every crypto company.
For sure. It's like any product, you know, there's the technology, there's so many technical things that go into it, but at the end of the day, it has to be delivered to a user, right? And there's so many different aspects that go into that. Crypto is such an emerging market. Even today, you know, we're 10 years from the beginning of Bitcoin. And I mean, things are still, you know, like we were talking about earlier, our grandparents, self-custody, probably not right for them yet, you know.
Totally.
So yeah, tons of opportunities in almost every facet of professionality within Web3.
Totally. And I do compare it to, the early days of investment banking. That's why everyone wants to go into investment banking, because like the early days there was so much opportunity, but a lot of the regulations kind of came in because of shady activities that went down, and a lot of that opportunity went away. And similar with tech, right? You had this big tech boom and there was so much opportunity. Right now, there's that opportunity exists in crypto and Web3. And so don't miss it, right? Like we might not get another opportunity like this in our lifetime. So like the time to get involved in the space is now.
Awesome.
In terms of getting access to the House of Web3, how do we get access? What does that look like? Is it a membership? Is there a monthly fee? What does that like really look like?
Totally. Yeah. So we aren't really trying to monetize off of the space. We really want it to be about, who's adding value. So you can go to the Edge and Node House of Web3's website and you can request an invite. And from there, we will likely introduce, different things where you can show how you're adding value to the graph, to the Web3 space. But right now, it's really just about getting the right people in with the right values.
What are some of your goals for the space? I know, like, you pretty much launched it about almost a year ago. Has it been almost a year?
Yes.
And what are some of your goals? Like, if you had like a Northern Star when you just launched this place, what would it be?
Yeah, it's all about serendipity. So I want people to find their soulmates, their founders, their colleagues, friends. It's really about kind of creating that space where people can come and network and get to know people in the industry. And we really want to host events. I think we're doing up to like 8 events a week right now for different projects across the crypto ecosystem. There was an ETH event recently there. Near had an event there. Stani from Lens came. So we're really kind of hosting a lot of really amazing people across the industry. And being open about who can come.
Awesome. As we wrap this up, I just wanted to give you a moment to just share anything, some advice, maybe your information or how to get involved more with the graph or anything. I'll kind of give the mic to you.
Totally. Yeah. I think one theme throughout my life is a lot of people have limited me. When I share my dreams with people, they are usually very big and people usually say, good luck, you can't really do that, or they laugh at you. It's been a theme from when I was 8 years old and wanted to move to New York City, and then arriving to Baruch and people saying this is a state school, you can't get into investment banking here, being a woman and, raising money, I've raised over 77 million as a woman. So don't let other people limit you, and just use their limitations to fuel whatever you're aspiring for. And you can find me, my website is tegankline.com, and I'm the Kline Venture across all channels, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter.
Yeah, we'll make sure to put all those links in the description. Tegan, once again, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. I think it was an amazing episode, some super cool stuff with the graph, Edge, and Node, and look forward to all the things that will be coming out of that, especially the House of Web3. I think that's an amazing space. The term serendipity sounds like it sums it up excellently. So thank you again, Tegan. This has been the CoinScan team coming at you with another episode of the Crypto Current.